Let's go ahead and kick it off, JB.
All right, guys, here we go. All right, so thanks for your participating, everybody, and thanks for being here. We'll get 120 of you on here. Make sure your questions are entered. So, hey, if you haven't been here before, it's JB and JC. We are the FFL consultants and the NSSF compliance partners. We answer your questions as members, and we certainly support you if you're one of our VIP members. So we'll get more into that later. We'll have the screen up at the end as well. So here we go. What are we going to be talking about today? There's a lot of legal updates, legislative updates at the state level and at the federal level. We're going to be talking about those, making sure you know what's going on with the different states around the country, because as gun dealers, you can be selling to customers online using GunBroker or some other online platform and doing internet sales, and you may be trying to transfer it to folks in states that can no longer accept your firearms. So we're going to go through that to make sure you have the statewide and countrywide knowledge, and we'll talk about that. And then we're going to get into FFL Compliance Corner, just a section we want to make sure we include each month, which gives you best practices based on what we're seeing and what we don't want to see during our online or in-person inspections. And then we're going to have FAQs at the end, obviously. Some of you have sent in your questions already. We really appreciate that. Send them in before our event when you get that first invite, and that gives us time to work on getting those answers together and provide the right information for you that you definitely are looking for and that you need. So here we go. If you tuned in on April 26th, hopefully many of you did. I know over 1 million people did look at this event, either live or on YouTube. And we'll tell you how to get it if you haven't, but it was the Congressional Interrogatory and Hearing with Steve Dettelbach from the ATF, and inquiry into ATF overreach on different issues such as zero tolerance, arm brace ruling, bump stock ruling, and different assorted issues that are before Congress or should be acted on by Congress. And thankfully we have action, but we don't have any results yet. So that was on April 26th. And where can you go ahead and see this if you haven't? You could go out to just go out to YouTube, and we like the Forbes breaking news site for this type of information. Just go to YouTube and type into the search bar, April 26th, Congress, an ATF hearing with Steve Dettelbach, and April 26th, you'll get the different folks who have provided this replay to you. It's 3 hours and 20 minutes. Full of absolutely biting information, questions, good questions by the Congress. Not so great answers by Mr. Dettelbach, who was basically in the hot seat for over 3 hours. So it's worth listening to. It'll provide great insight into hopefully where we're going with all of this. Unfortunately, though, I think it was 6 or 7 times during the event, Mr. Dettelbach was asked if he can define assault weapon. And obviously, he could not. He claimed not to be a firearms expert, and therefore, specific questions on assault rifle or assault weapon bans were basically not answered and left to ponder. So Congress is going after this in many ways. Unfortunately, we do not have any results as of yet, but we'll talk a little more about this in just a minute. JC, am I coming through okay?
You're coming through just fine. If anybody's having problems with audio, please just turn up your local volume on whatever system you're using.
Yep. Okay. Keep those questions coming. I see them coming in. Thank you. All right. First thing we're going to tackle is what Mr. Dettelbach said about the ATF arm brace ruling, if anything. And like I said, there's no results, lots of questions. And unfortunately, we are still looking at a May 31st enforcement. I got a few questions this morning, guys, and just heads up, it doesn't help for us to get a lot of questions the morning of the event because we're holding other webinars. This is a big webinar day for us with lots of different groups. So if you had that, someone had a question about arm braces and registering their SBRs, one of you guys did, please throw it into the chat room, and we'll get to that at the end of this session. But JC, what are we looking for May 31st rather now? What is the deadline criteria?
May 31st is your deadline to get those Form 1s or Form 2s in. As far as depending on what type of FFL you are, FFL type 1 and 2, that's your standard dealer and pawn shop. You guys would do a Form 1 if you have any of these in inventory. That's to avoid that $200 tax stamp charge. And Form 2 is for you manufacturers and importers. So just be aware of that. Essentially, you should have gotten all that stuff turned in already. For all you FFLs, if you're trying to sell these firearms with an arm brace or with the intention of sending the arm brace with the AR pistol, do not do that. That is actually considered contraband and should be turned over to the ATF. And most of our clients, as well as NSSF members, have been calling us about this. And unfortunately, we've been telling them, hey, look, it's pretty much done. Just so you are aware, if you submit a Form 1 or Form 2 for one of these AR pistols with the arm brace and you want to make it a SBR or short barrel rifle, you have until that May 31st deadline. You also want to keep in mind that you will get what's called a conditional approval initially. This is not the Form 1. This is just a conditional approval that they will provide to you. You will still have to wait for the actual Form 1 to be approved and provided to you before you can do anything with that SBR. Again, keep that conditional approval with you if you take that firearm out to the range or whatnot, just in case, especially if you're in a less gun-friendly state or locality, jurisdiction. You want to make sure that you can show that you have the appropriate paperwork for that item. So again, don't ship the arm braces with an AR pistol. That is not good. So if you do receive an AR pistol with an arm brace from FedEx or UPS from another FFL, make every effort to get that package turned right around to UPS and FedEx right there and then, and send it back to whoever sent it to you. All right. Any questions on this, please feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, for clarification, JC, how about as dealers as far as registering their SBRs if they want to in FFL inventory? That's past due? That's past.
You have until May 31st. You really should have gotten it in, but you do have until May 31st to get that done.
Okay, great. All right. Next question. Here we go. All right, let's go through some legal updates now. All of you, whether in the states we mentioned or not, you need to realize that, again, you may have buyers visiting you or doing online purchasing from these states, and you have to realize because the gun brokerage platforms are not going to do this for you online, you have to realize where you have legal purchasers or not, because you're going to run into refunds and non-deliverables and chargebacks and different things. So cancel payments. You got to be careful. Let's just start with, first of all, there's many state issued regulations that everyone's reacting to, but keep in mind the ATF is who regulates you as FFLs. The state requirements will govern more the civilian laws and requirements and registrations and restrictions and who you can sell to, etc. But remember, the ATF is who we have to watch and the regulations we have to abide by. So the ATF rules override any state approved legislation, although the ATF inspectors do have authority to enforce the state regulations and have a duty to do so, although they will appear on your revocation, notice of revocation, or report of violations differently than a federal citable offense. Here's the big issue on any of these state laws that are occurring or in limbo or being argued or being have lawsuits pending. Just refrain as an FFL, refrain from giving legal advice. We get 10 or 20 calls a week from non-FFLs because people Google us and think we have all the answers, but not for civilians, not for all of the state rules that are affecting possession and purchasing at the state level. We certainly can talk to you and we'll give you the best advice, but we warn you about falling into that liability trap. Refrain from offering legal advice. Refer them to the government sites, as we do to the bills where they are pending in the House or the Senate, etc. All right, we're going to tackle Illinois a little bit. Again, we are not attorneys, and we do the best we can to absorb and digest all of these different laws by state. And we will be updating our restricted states guide by the end of the week. We were waiting for a lot of this to transpire, but here we are with some updates. First of all, with Illinois, this is crazy. they've been going through just a tumultuous time of an AR ban that was imposed in January. Then it was repealed about 10 days ago, and now it is back in force. We just can't keep track of what's going on. It's a daily update that you have to be tracking using all of your tools that you might have available to you. Certainly stay in touch with your government websites and your state websites wherever you are. But in AR, in Illinois, the Protect Illinois Communities Act, otherwise known as PICA, has been imposed on top of already tough restrictions that Illinois had before with the FOID card. But the emergency enactment, which occurred back in January, I believe on a Tuesday or Wednesday morning, forced gun dealers to put everything on hold regarding AR weapons, assault weapons, and high capacity magazines for the most part. So there's arguments right now at the highest level, meaning the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett is involved as a justice. She is heading up a panel of Supreme Court justices, which will review the Illinois state AR ban, and more specifically, whether or not it's constitutional to restrict the sale of AR weapons, whatever an assault weapon may be finally defined as, if somebody ever figures that out, and along with the high capacity magazine ban. So she has requested replies from both sides, the state, Senate, and the private industry, and any claims and lawsuits that have been filed. So all of that is actually due today. So we are going to wait patiently with bated breath for the next week or two to see what, if anything, the Supreme Court decides. They will decide because it's in their, it's on their calendar to hear this case or these cases because there's so many. It's just not one lawsuit. There are several. So this is going to lay the foundation for the rest of the country, hopefully, as far as AR weapon bans, assault weapon bans, and all the other state implemented statutes that we're going to talk about, following this slide. The other states are just all following suit as they normally do. First it was California, then it was New York, now it's Illinois, then it's Washington and Oregon. And we just want less states to be doing this, and hopefully the Supreme Court decision will help us pave the way for less restrictions versus more. Let's keep our fingers crossed on that. If we find anything time sensitive, we'll blurt that out to you in way of an email. Here's the most ridiculous thing we've heard as of Friday, based on, again, this ban being imposed and then rescinded and then imposed again last week. The Illinois State Police issued to all the gun dealers that, hey, if you took advantage of the 1 week or so, 8 days, I think it was, that this ban was lifted, we just want you to know that the transfers may not be lawful, okay? So if you initiated, and we're getting a lot of calls on this, why we included it here, if you initiated transfers in the state of Illinois when the ban was lifted, but they were not completed, meaning they were delayed and not transferred before last Friday, then any transfers thereafter or on Friday would be unlawful. That means they're no good. You got to get those guns back. You got those customers aren't in lawful possession of those transfers because under the law they were not permitted. We can talk more about that later or put your questions in the chat. If you did take advantage, if customers did take advantage of this in Illinois and you did transfer those guns within that short 8-day or 9-day time frame, it will be unlawful for those people to continue to possess those firearms beyond January of next year. What does that mean? That we're not really sure, but that's what they said. And then further, the state police issued this information, again, to your gun dealers, that said if you possess these firearms before the ban ever was enacted back in January, and anyone had these high capacity magazines or ARs in their possession, that was fine. But guess what? Everyone who has these has to sign an affidavit and submit it by January of next year. Otherwise, they will be in unlawful possession of firearms. Guys, that's why it is so important for you to be involved as FFLs when this type of legislation is imposed or presented anywhere or discussed. It's an educational process to alert everyone to contact your legislatures, phone, email, or otherwise, and demand that we have action to argue any type of enactment that we're seeing in states like Illinois. You've got to speak out. You got to speak up and speak out. Over in Washington State, this is another one. Again, you're going to have a big issue with selling customers in the state of Washington try to order guns online and have them shipped over to Washington. They're not going to go anywhere. They're going to come right back to you. They're going to land at the FFL. They're going to be rejected if they're ARs or high capacity magazines. This all went into effect 2 weeks ago. Again, we woke up, it was voted on in the middle of the night or end of the night. Next morning, everything was illegal. We have dealers across Washington, all types of dealers who are stuck with ARs and high capacity magazines they cannot sell to citizens of the state of Washington. The restriction is on transferring, importing, and manufacturing. Aero Precision, as you know, is based up in the state of Washington, and now they can only ship out of state. They cannot manufacture, sell, or import it for anyone in the state. So there's companies like RSR and Aero Precision and the NSSF and others who are all filing lawsuits against the states for these types of new laws, which we all deem unconstitutional and unlawful. But until the lawsuits are finalized, heard, and decided on, it is what it is. The Washington State has another law going into effect next year with a 10-day mandatory waiting period and all types of pre-purchase safety training requirements imposing dealer liability. There's just government interference, and it's very public that the state of Washington, the liberal democracy up there, is simply wanting to close down gun dealers. That has been verbalized. So it's not a hidden agenda. But here's what we do. We have a great VIP client, Craig Terry, over in Washington. He asked us as a big favor, which is something we do for all of you guys. He's the owner of LC Sports. They do the biggest gun show in Washington every weekend, someplace else. Been there, done that. Craig has a vast inventory of ARs available, very nice selection, competitive pricing. He's looking to unload part of his inventory pending the outcome of this. And they're not selling it all, but please, if you've got questions or looking for ARs, great assortment at a good price, please contact Craig. There's his number, 425-750-4968. He'll take care of the providing the inventory of what's available and your pricing. And hey, call him sooner than later because his stock, I'm sure, is going to go fast. Love his stock, love his assortment, and good luck, Craig, and good luck everyone in Washington State. So let's move on to where we go now. How about Colorado? Oh, yep, Colorado. JC, what's going on in Colorado now?
All right, so real quick, adjournment of the General Assembly actually occurs today. So it's 90 days from today. The state of Colorado is requiring anybody that wishes to purchase a firearm must be 21 and up. Does not matter what type of firearm it is. Again, 21 and up in the state of Colorado. And we will be implementing a mandatory 3-day wait on all transfers starting 10/1. That's October 1st of 2023. That 90 days following adjournment is 90 days starting tomorrow, since it adjourns tonight at midnight, allegedly. We'll see if that happens. They usually argue well into the wee hours, so we'll see what happens. They also implemented stronger red flag laws in the state of Colorado, as well as something we've been seeing in numerous blue states is that dealer liability. That's being challenged on a regular basis because it actually preempts federal law, but that will remain to be seen what happens there. I fully expect multiple lawsuits involving all of this. As a matter of fact, several have already been filed. So just be aware of that, especially for you Colorado dealers. Make sure you know that 90 days from tomorrow, or from today rather, 21 and up for all firearm type purchases, and then that mandatory 3-day wait goes into effect 10/1/23. And I'm sure we'll be getting more information out to you around September timeframe for that.
Yeah, we'll certainly keep you guys updated on all these additional laws taking place later in the state, if in fact they stick. So again, waiting for Supreme Court, right?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, JC.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to run into Compliance Corner. Keep your questions coming. Thank you so much for using that chat box. So here we go. We're going to, JC and I, we still travel every week. I mean, 2 or 3 gun dealers each. So that's a lot of audits, a lot of 4473s we see. In as much as we hold these monthly review sessions with you guys, educational sessions, we see lots of weird stuff. So we're going to share that with you every month to make sure you don't see it in your stores. So just a quick update. We had a couple questions in the last couple of weeks on why is the old eForm, why is the eForm still using the old 4473? And the answer is because you have to go and re-download eForm 4473 from the main site for your platform, whether it be iOS or Windows. So the new form is out there. We tested it on Saturday. It is there. Please go down and if you're using E4473 and you have the old form showing up 2020 version, just go download the new or the software, re-download it, get it all back in place, and you'll have the new form populate. So that's that solution real fast. Here we go. Corrections, making corrections. You know, this is just last week, and this is actually, you know, real examples. We don't make this stuff up, guys. So, hey, I had a 4473. And it looked a little messy at first, and I read through it and I said, what's going on? And hey, guess what? Everything is corrected. Everything is right. Everything is legible, and the form is okay. But at first glance, you would say, what the heck is going on? So they had incorrectly entered the CANIC serial number on line 1. They made a mistake. They realized either they had the wrong gun or just copied down the wrong numbers. They added on line 2, which is fine. They cross out line 3, which is not required, but an old best practice to cross out lines you don't use on a paper 4473s. And hence, they've got one gun transferring, make it very clear, ONE, and it looks like it's pawn redemption. So, hey, great way, as messy as it is, it's correct. And I just wanted to show you guys that you don't need to start over. You don't need to have perfect forms. In fact, the ATF doesn't like perfect forms. Something's askew if you never have a mistake, or if a customer never makes a mistake. We know that happens. They know it happens. Just make sure you're updating with initials and dates any item that was corrected. Next slide here is three-hole punching. Oh my goodness, we don't want this to happen. I think I looked at 300 or 400 4473 is at this deal last week. And they were three-hole punching every completed form 4473 and putting it very nicely in chronological sequence into their binders by year and month and everything else. And it all looked beautiful, except for the fact that there was many three-hole punches through the prohibiting question answers. This is a citable violation. If the ATF cannot determine that that was a non-prohibited person through their own admission by examining the transfer document, which is the federal document you must retain forever, it's a violation of, it's an incomplete background check and hence an incomplete form 4473. So please don't do this. If you're three-hole punching, do it in such a way that it does not interfere with the data being shown. All right. Next, we got the ATF Communication Log. JC, this is near and dear to your heart. Why don't you run through this one?
Oh yeah, the old ATF Communications Log. Let's keep those logs going. Get that 3-ring binder with some loose leaf or a multi-subject spiral notebook from Walmart or from your local pharmacy store, CVS, Walgreens, whatever. But vitally important to you all, especially as it relates to anything adverse action wise. We want to make sure that you have all of the interactions that you've had with local law enforcement, with the ATF, as well as whatever training. You want to make sure you're documenting the training, even if it's just something like on 5/8 of 2023, Monday, I attended the FFL Consultants Ask Us Anything. They provide us a variety of training on 4473s, et cetera. You want to make sure that you're recording that information. So in the event of any type of administrative action down the road, we have that to fall back on to kind of argue that you're not willful, that you are trying your best to remain compliant. You want to document anything related to trace requests, when you received them, when you responded to them, any investigations you provide local law enforcement or the ATF support with. You want to make sure that's documented. If you received an email thanking you for the information and your support, we want you to keep that and log that you got that. We want you to mark down any post-Brady date denials that you might have received, any straw purchase attempts, what happened in that scenario, who you reported it to, local law enforcement, ATF, whatever the case may be. all that staff training, if you conduct like weekly staff training, or you've signed up with us to provide staff training to your organization specifically, make sure you're documenting that. Document when you take inventories, document any unusual events. I know it's tedious, it's asking a lot, and you've got a lot to do, but in the end, this can greatly help and support you in the event of any type of administrative action. So make sure you're keeping that ATF Communications, ATF Law Enforcement Communications and Training Log, and keeping it up to date and regular. I mean, if you're doing it at the end of business day every day, or you're doing it at the end of the week, that's fine. Just make sure you're keeping track of this stuff.
All right. And guys, lately, a lot we're adding this just because a lot of you have been calling, and I guess with the ATF National Tracing Center going down, the fax server went down, and this happens across either the whole country or different states or different regions. But they'll send a note out to you, email or text or both, and they'll advise you that their server's down, use email instead of faxing, blah blah blah. And Nix has been known to do the same thing. But the issue came up is, you know, they're telling you what to make sure you email in because the fax isn't working. We got this demand to letter being mentioned, and I got to tell you that this was 2 weeks ago, and we got about 25 calls in one day about what is a demand to? Am I missing something? Am I in trouble? I never heard of this. JC, can you run through this?
Yeah, here's your demand to. This is a program that the National Tracing Center has. There used to be multiple of them. Now there's only a couple different ones, but the demand to is the most kind of prevalent one in the industry. If you receive a demand to letter, please, please, please make sure that you read through it. Don't just toss it aside. We actually had an FFL that we had to support with a revocation because they failed to go ahead and submit that demand to information. What the demand to means is that you have had 25 or more guns in the preceding 12-month period where it was a used firearm that received a trace request due to that firearm being either recovered at a crime scene or recovered by law enforcement, and that recovery occurred within 3 years of that transaction. So if you've had 25 or more trace requests in a 12-month period for firearms that you've transacted in a 3-year period, you have to submit specific acquisition information related to that firearm. They don't want to know who you transacted that firearm to. That's what a trace request for. They just want to know what firearms you're actually transacting as far as used firearms are concerned. So please, please make sure that you read that letter. It's very important. You are required to do an initial push of acquisition information about firearms to the ATF National Tracing Center. And then once a quarter, you're going to have to submit that report on any used firearms that you take in. Again, it does not include any acquisition information as far as the person that you acquired the firearm from. They just want the firearm specific information.
And what they're doing, guys, it helps them expedite their tracing program, not to call everybody all the time on every gun, because they keep a log of somebody's, because the propensity for you in the, whether it be a demographics or a clientele, you have more traces than normal for guns showing up at crime scenes, basically. So are you in trouble when you get this? No. Do you have to do it? Oh yeah. Do you miss it?
Yeah, you have to do it.
Yeah. Can you miss it, JC?
No, you cannot miss it. If you miss it or refuse to respond, you will get revoked. I guarantee you, you will get a notice of revocation.
Yep. And we help a lot of our clients complete this quarterly. If you got questions about it, please ask us. It's great if you are a computerized program, A&D program, but if you're paper, it's a little more work. And we can help you get that set up if in fact you get that letter that you're added to the program. Okay. Remember, you'll get a letter. You're not automatically added. You'll get a letter notifying you're on a program. All right. This is the question of the month, of the year, of the season. What do I do with 21N1 and 21N2? I think we get 30 or 40 of these calls a week, so we make sure we are reviewing it for you once again. And we're also bringing this up in all the next training days we're doing with the ATF present, and the ATF is telling us that it is legal and lawful for you to do exactly what we're showing you on the screen. If you are still using the paper documents, you can highlight the instructions there in the box, 21N1 and 2, that U.S. citizens and nationals leave 21N1 and 21N2 blank. Again, we know it's in the wrong place. It should be before the question, not after 21N1. But here's what the ATF has confirmed for us, that if the customer checks the no box on these questions, it is not a citable violation. It's not a violation of law. It's not a prohibiting factor to the transfer. But they would like you to make sure the customer does not check those boxes, either by accident. So go ahead, and you are allowed to highlight it just like we have in yellow. You're allowed to write a big red circle around it like they have there. We saw that actually on the ATF training screen. They circled it. So go ahead and highlight it for your customers. Use our Before You Begin guide, for first-time gun buyers. That's available from us. It talks about it there for someone who's never filled out this form before. So please do what you can, but you don't have to go crazy getting that box corrected by the customer if they accidentally check it with no answers. If they check them both as no's and they're still in the store, they can cross it out, initial and date it, leave it blank. But if you realize this after the transfer is completed, and I don't know why you would do that because you check these forms before you transfer the gun, but if you realize later that they've done so, it's not critical that they come back and correct those two boxes for you. And again, there's no penalty if your customer accidentally checks these boxes, but do your best to keep it clean, keep it right. All right. Form 4473, box 32, guys. Yeah, JC and I, we probably look at 1,000 forms each week as we travel. And I say less than 1% uses box 32 for anything that's important, but that is important. In this case, this was last week, they had a 28-day release, meaning we have 30 days from the date of the next background check submittal or approval, rather, for that to go ahead and serve as a 30-day transfer. In this case, it was 28 days. You look at the form, it was back in February, so you got to count those February days and then March days and figure out what's 30, because February has 28 days, and we all, but they put right there in the box 28 days. That means the ATF IOI, when they come to do the investigation and audit review, won't have to pull this form out to go check the dates with a calendar and see if the transfer was expired or if it was legitimate. So use box 32 for things like gun not transferred if it's a delay, or just write your G&T, the acronym, to show the ATF investigator when they look at the form. There's a note in box 32 that explains that form because it's a little unusual, or maybe the transfer has something quirky going on with it. Maybe it was a gift. Maybe it was a wife buying their husband a birthday gift, and they wanted to clarify that because it may not align with the A&D book or something to that effect. Again, anything unusual, use it for your initials. Whoever's reviewing your 4473s, that second check, third checker, put the initials in there. ATF investigators are looking at box 32 to see if you're taking the extra step to make sure things are done correctly. Again, use it. If you've never used it, don't be afraid to use it, because they're looking at it and we are as well. Let's see what's next. Let's move on. More items of interest. All right, we're moving off of our compliance corner. If you guys in the future, before these webinars, and you get the invite, you want something included as a training session in compliance corner, just send it in. We'll be happy to create a session just for you. All right, guys. We haven't talked about it in a while, but here goes our little spiel on preventing burglaries at your place of business. Burglaries are not a good thing. That's one of the things we're talking about as we travel around the country now doing these NICS training days, is Operation Secure Store. And SSF proudly created this program with the ATF about 6 or 7 years ago. We were a big part of creating it, putting all the details together for you. There is a Operation Secure Store self-assessment checklist available right at that website. Just go there, log on, and get the checklist we would use to come and do your security survey. If you called us and hired us to come out and say, hey guys, how can I prevent a burglary here? What do I need to do? If I have some extra capital, some extra money, and I need to upgrade my security, what should I do to prevent burglaries based on your knowledge and history? That's what we do. Now, unfortunately, we were not out at Beach Grove, Indiana last week. We don't know who they were. They're not one of our clients, not one of our customers. Never talked to them before, but they got burglarized. The old steal a car, drive it through the front door. 3 guys run in, smash the glass cases, take dozens and dozens of guns. They're all over the news. They made national news. It's all fodder for the anti-gun groups, Bloomberg, Anytown, etc. We don't want to do that as an industry. We want to prevent burglaries, slow down the bandits, make them work really hard if they do break in, but do everything we can do to deter them from breaking in. This year alone, we have over 200 burglaries. There's only 5 months through the year. Unfortunately, we feel like this is going to be a big year for burglaries, so we don't want you to be the next victim. So get your Operation Secure Store self-assessment checklist now. The other issue we want to talk about real fast is mass shootings and active shooter incidents. Unfortunately, it feels like it's an every week issue. We're not going to talk about how to prevent it. We're going to tell you as a gun dealer, because we've supported many or several of our FFLs through this experience, what happens to the FFL who sold or transferred those firearms to the person who went and committed a mass shooting or an active shooter incident. What do you have to be ready for, and what should you expect? You know, we sell guns every day. This might happen. So what are you going to do if it does? First of all, let's define what mass shooting really means. If you go to the Britannica official website, which tracks all mass shootings by year, location, and details, you'll find that mass shootings are not what the media claims them to be. They're describing mass shootings or active shooter incidents as mass shootings. Different media outlets are incorporating any shooting, any accident, any crime with a gun as a mass shooting or an active shooter incident. So it's all over the place, but the true definition of a mass shooting is 3 or more casualties or deaths from a single incident. That could be 1 shooter, 2 shooters, more than one, but a single incident at a single location by 1 or more persons, killing 3 or more people. That's it. That's what an active shooter is. I'm sorry, a mass shooting incident by definition. And there are only 8 as of Saturday. There's only 8 in the United States this year. So when you hear hundreds and hundreds of these issues being reported, that's not true, grossly overstated by the media. I just want to clarify for your knowledge. So what's going to happen? So if this happens where you are, if you were in Allen, Texas last week, at the Allen outside of Dallas, the Allen Mall, the first thing that's going to happen when that firearm is actually recovered, either at the crime scene or on a person, there's going to be an urgent trace. Local and federal ATF is going to show up at the FFL where the firearm was last transferred. There's going to be a detailed investigation, review of your 4473s, security footage, review of your business records attached to that. They will come with a search warrant to access all of your records, so you cannot say no. There'll be staff interviews. They are allowed to interview your employees under that warrant, an investigative process. It's going to be traumatic for your staff because somebody in your store, if it wasn't you, transferred that gun to the person who used it to kill people. It's a very difficult situation to deal with. But the ATF is there to make sure you did everything right, and more importantly, to see if you did anything wrong. Okay, because somebody's got to be blamed, right? That's what everybody wants to do, is blame someone, whether it be not the shooter, they'll blame the gun dealer. So again, we want you to avoid this and avoid becoming that victim. If in fact you are involved, and many of you, I guess all of you who we know who have been involved in any of these shootings obviously have called us because we've been brought in or contacted directly by you or the NSSF to support you through the crisis management. We'll tell you right away, make sure you call your lawyer. You've already gotten in touch with a consultant or us. You'll have to call your insurance carrier, file a claim, a preemptive claim, let them know something really bad happened. We're going to tell you, review your 4473s for completeness before the ATF shows up, obviously. Expect the media to call or knock on your door, show up with the van outside with cameras. You need to identify your spokesperson. Who's going to take lead? Who's in charge? What do we say? What do we not say? You can't not say anything. No comment is not the right thing to say. So what do you say? How do you deal with it? Do you need a professional PR person? Do you need staff EAP, employee assistance program support? Do you need counseling and coaching for those poor employees who may have transferred the firearm to the individual and don't know how to deal with it? And then obviously, be ready for the public criticism and outrage, and you might have to close your doors for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or maybe forever. These are things you need to worry about. So most importantly, we'll bring this up, have a plan, have a discussion, start talking about this as a senior group, wherever you are, and however big or small your company is, because this is what happens. All right. Again, if you got questions, throw them into the comment box or the chat box. We looked at inspections on Saturday. The ATF has not, unfortunately, has not updated their inspection criteria for April. So we will try to push that out to you via way of email when it's available and give you an update on audits by state and revocations year to date. So next, lastly, we're gonna talk about don't get revoked. You know, it's a topic of conversation for the last 18 months. JC, why don't you give us some good news, actually?
Good news is, what was it, JB? We talked about this morning. I think 2 of the February revocation hearings we just heard back on, and successfully saved those 2 FFLs. I have revocation hearings that we've provided support on all the way back to February that we were still waiting on a decision, a final decision on those. There are any number of circumstances. It doesn't really matter one way or another about the amount of time that passes between the revocation hearing and the time that we find out about it. We've had several that we've waited months for a successful resolution to. So that really doesn't have anything to do with it. It's a matter of getting the court reporter's report, getting that reviewed, providing all of the various exhibits that we submit to the ATF for review. Then the director of industry operation, who is the hearing officer over these, they have to put together a report, submit it to headquarters. It's got to go all the way up to the attorney general's office and then all the way back down again. So the good news is we got a couple of FFLs that successfully walked away from a notice of revocation and are allowed to remain in business. The bad news is we're still waiting on a bunch of them to get a final decision. So for those of you on the call today that we've supported through a revocation hearing, please be patient. I know it's taxing and very stressful. Just know we've got your back, and just like you, we're waiting on an answer too. So, and there's never any real indication one way or another as far as the DIO and the hearing officer, what direction it's going to go. They can't tell us because they have to wait for all the information to be put in front of them and them to review it. So just be patient. We're here. You need us, call on us. That's what we're here to do. And so far, so good. We've been very good at it. So,
yep. Yeah, I want to highlight, guys. First of all, a lot of you are premium retail members or range members with the NSSF. A lot of you, hundreds of you are VIP members with us. Listen, if the ATF shows up, we've got to tell you once and for all. If the ATF shows up, calls you, call us. If you hear from the ATF on anything, make us a partner. That's what you pay us for. That's what you're here for. That's what you pay your memberships for. And if you're not a member or a VIP customer, call us anyway. We've dealt with JC, I believe all the ATF offices now through revocation, right? Is there one or two? Maybe one or two.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yep. So we've had interaction with all the DIOs, all the area supervisors. We've been working with these folks for more than 10 years, and we were in the industry, for longer than that. So we know the ins, the outs, the do's, the don'ts. But most importantly here, what gets to me is when you have an ATF inspection, whether you're a member or not, and you call us either in the middle or at the end of the inspection to say, can you help me? And the answer is going to be not really. Our goal is to hold your hand through the inspection process, make sure you come out clean, make sure you do everything you can throughout the process, and especially before signing the closing conference summary. Right, JC? I mean,
that is correct.
Yeah, the issue is
getting a hold of us after the fact really doesn't, then we're scrambling to react.
Yeah. And if you don't have your debates, your challenges, and your arguments on record with the ATF IOI who's completing your inspection before you sign it, you might as well kiss your butt goodbye. The challenge to argue after the fact, after you've agreed to the report of violations that you sign at the end of an inspection is your problem. Okay, we're telling you, we're educating you, we're telling you, You're allowed to make arguments before you sign it. You don't have to sign it on the day of the closing conference. You can take a few days, even up to a week maybe, and provide written documentation as to why something happened, what you've done, how you're going to fix it, what you've already done regarding the employees involved, et cetera, et cetera. Trying to fight your arguments of the reported violations after you've received a notice of revocation is like starting from scratch and build a skyscraper from the foundation. We'd rather be involved with you midway or early in the process so that you don't have this very expensive and very maybe challenging situation that you may not be able to come out with a positive ending for. Okay, going back to the logbook, recreating all your documentation activities, what you've done all along the way to try to prevent this and be compliant. All of that is very, very important. So please, I'm spending a lot of time on this, but people are, that have been on our calls for a year still don't call us until it's too late. And we say, I'm sorry, there's not much we can do. And it's not about the money, guys. It's about the challenge. Okay. Sometimes we just know we can't help you. So,
one thing on that, JB, and you bring up the word challenge. Great segue for me. I just had a conversation last week. We have an FFL down in Florida that we're supporting through a revocation hearing actually on Thursday of this week. I fly out tomorrow to go spend a couple of days with them coaching and prepping prior to the hearing. And on one of the actual violations that was cited and is being brought up for the revocation is that the FFL failed to wait the mandatory 5-day waiting period in Broward and Miami-Dade counties down in South Florida. And as we're going through the information, as we're going through and building out our case and pulling together all the exhibits and putting together the stipulations and everything that we're going to use as defense in this case, we find out that I think it was 9 total violations where the FFL failed to wait the mandatory 5-day wait period. Well, 7 of those, the FFL had evidence that they did actually wait the 5-day period. They had layaway tickets showing that the customer had made the financial transaction well outside the 5-day range. And I called the director of industry operations and said, hey, listen, we're going to submit a stipulation on this that, on 7 of these, they're really not violations. 2 of them, it was an IOI mistake. And the other 5 was a layaway situation where the customer had prepaid. Well, when I'm going over this with the director of industry operations for the Miami Field Division, she says to me point blank, why didn't the FFL challenge this during the closing conference? And I told her straight up, I said, because FFLs, some of them are really afraid that, they don't know that they can challenge these. And that's why we participate in closing conferences, so we can ask questions during those times. And I'm going to tell you right now, as you find out things, what's going on with your inspection, be sure to challenge the IOI. Say, hey, look, hey, no, that I know that transaction, or can I look up that transaction to see X, Y, or Z? Can I get some supporting documentation to show you that that's not actually a violation? Do it respectfully. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be, mean to them or anything. Just say, hey, look, can I look into that in a second before you cite me for that violation? Completely allowable. And again, to JB's point, don't wait to call us after you're done with the closing conference and the revocation process starts, or whatever other administrative action. We'll certainly help you. It's going to make it a lot more difficult. You get us on the phone ahead of time as soon as the ATF shows up, then we can start the process to tell you how to make sure that you interact and engage with that ATF IOI and what that process looks like, and we help you every step of the way.
Thanks, JC. Hey guys, I forgot to tell you, we had another webinar this morning for another group, and quite frankly, during the presentation, my phone kept ringing, and usually, you guys know, I'll send you a text that says, hey, I'm busy, call me back if it's an emergency. She called 3 times. She got broken into last night, just coincidentally. So that was down in Florida. They're a gun show weekender. They have all the firearms in a storage facility, very secure, but guess what? They still got in. They had all the guns secured. What I thought was a pretty good situation, not Fort Knox, but pretty good. and they lost 43 guns. So again, there goes just another bad day for a gun dealer when they lose guns. So it is happening, and we don't hear about them all, but you know, do the best you can to secure your firearms. But all right, next slide. Let's go. Hey, all right, JC, just a review on these real fast, right?
All right. So really quick here. Sorry. Some window just popped up and that was weird.
Oh.
All right. Common violations, notice of revocation. This is what we're seeing. All right. For those of you that have never had an inspection before, if you have one deadly sin, just one, you could potentially be receiving a notice of revocation. You know, and it really depends. So these are the most common that we're seeing: missing, duplicate, or expired NICS point of contact state transactions or control numbers. That 30-day period is gone, is expired. Or you have a duplicate transaction number from NICS or from a point of contact state, meaning you use the same control number or same NTN twice, or it's completely missing. The field is blank and you have no evidence that you conducted a background check on that individual. Those are key. You will get a notice of revocation as it relates to those. So be mindful of that. We tell each and every one of you, print off the results that you receive from NICS, print off the results you receive from your point of contact state. If you have that capability, make sure you're maintaining that in your buddy file. It's hugely beneficial. Now, if you didn't fill out that box on the 4473, but you have that evidence, you may still receive a notice of revocation. Just understand that. But the beauty of it is you have evidence that you did a background check. All right. You have evidence you did a background check. Now it turns into a situation where you made an error, made a mistake by not filling in the 4473, and you can provide that evidence to the hearing officer to show you did do a background check with regard to that transaction. Brady date release violations before that 3-day Brady date expiration. Remember, those 3 days are 3 government business days. Before that 10-day delay on those 18 to 20-year-olds, if you release a firearm and you're told to delay that transaction for 10 days, boom, you're going to get a notice of revocation. For those states that do not allow a transfer until you receive an actual proceed, like the state of Colorado, you will get a notice of revocation if you don't wait for that proceed. And then there again, that expired NICS or point of contact state transaction or control number after 30 days. We're telling all of our FFLs that we support, make sure you're paying attention in that 20 to 30 day period, and reach out to us and we'll give you kind of a little insight on our guide on how to deal with those. We have like a 3-file system that helps you with that to ensure you do not transfer a firearm after that 30-day expiration. Remember, day 1 of the expiration period is if you did the background check today, day 1 is tomorrow. All right. Next point is contact state exemption non-compliance. That's that out-of-state CCW. Sorry, member calling in there. That's that CCW for out-of-state. Remember, yep, sure, you have reciprocity. You can carry a concealed firearm. You're an out-of-state resident in that state you're visiting. Has absolutely nothing to do with purchasing the firearm. All right. So make sure that you're not accepting out-of-state concealed carry permits. Out-of-state resident transfer non-compliance. You got to know the laws in both states. Remember that. Okay. You can't transfer handguns, number one, to an out-of-state resident, but there are other restrictions as well. We just had an FFL get a notice of revocation because they transferred a AR or MSR or AR platform rifle to a California resident, and they are having to go through revocation for that. Expired concealed weapon permits. Remember, if it's expired, it's no good for that NICS exemption. All right. So make sure that you're paying attention to the expiration date on those concealed weapon permits. If they have a letter from their sheriff or their state stating that the concealed carry permit is extended while they process the renewal, that does not count. That letter only allows them to continue to carry the firearm concealed until they get a renewal. If it's expired, it's expired. I don't care what the state or the sheriff's department issued to them as far as an extension. Don't fall into the trap. Missing or incomplete ATF Form 4473, specifically identification information, making sure that ID matches the information the customer entered on the form. Section B, items 21A through N2 now. Make sure that you're paying attention to what's going on in that prohibited person questionnaire. Make sure signatures and dates are captured. You need to make sure the customer is signing and certifying that form. Make sure common violation, the date, the certification date. I see it so often that the customer is putting either their birth date or birth year in item, what is that, JB 23? Make sure you're paying attention to that. You as the FFL also in section C may fall victim to putting the birth date in for the expiration of the ID. You need to be making sure you're paying attention to that as well. Adding that unnecessary supplemental document. Remember, if it's not required to be attached to the 4473, move that documentation to your buddy file. That's photocopies of your IDs, photocopies of CCWs, photocopies of supplemental doc that you collected to verify address, etc. That is not required to be kept with the 4473. Remember, there's only a handful of things that are required to be maintained with and affixed to the 4473 that corresponds to that information. So anything not required, put it in your buddy file. Remember, that supplemental document that you attach to the 4473 can be used by the ATF to validate the information entered on the 4473. But conversely, it will not get you out of a revocable situation, such as if you have an ID, a photocopy of an ID attached to the 4473, but you failed to input information as far as the identification information on the 4473, or that information does not match, and you did not obtain some sort of supplemental document and record it in 26B, it could be used against you as well. So keep that in mind, all right? Recurring violations. If you've had a previous ATF inspection or experienced any type of adverse action, administrative action against your license, that's a warning letter, a warning conference. If you have any repeat or recurring violations, you are going to be faced with a notice of revocation. So you have to make sure, you specifically have to make sure you are 100% for your next inspection. And then keep in mind, ATF operations, the Criminal Enforcement Division, they are out there, they are doing stings, they are doing attempted straw purchases, they are taking a look at FFLs to ensure they're in compliance and making sure they're doing everything they can. We have seen ATF personnel come into stores, attempt to do straw purchases, a male and a female, two males will come in and they'll do a straw purchase attempt, atypical scenarios in those situations. We've also had ATF criminal enforcement special agents come in and do sovereign citizen type scenarios where they're attempting to, overthrow the government or renounce their citizenship or don't want to give you their ID, and they're trying to get you to play into the scenario. So be aware, criminal enforcement is out there. They're doing stings. Don't set yourself up for failure. Remember, you have the right as an FFL to refuse any sale for any reason. All right. And trust me, we have an FFL down in North Florida, ATF agent that's come into their store before to get a copy of a 4473 or ask questions about a transaction. They've come in and attempted to sting that FFL, and the FFL actually called them out on it and said, "Why are you doing this? You're an ATF agent. I know you're an ATF agent. You've been here before." I mean, that's how foolish it can be. So just keep an eye out for it. Make sure you train your personnel.
Yeah, guys, so get it right the first time. You've heard it. That's all. GERFT, get it right the first time, and no repeat violations. Any previous adverse action, you can't have any violations, as JC said. With the 4473, we say check it twice before the transfer. Why not check it 3 times? Why not make it perfect, especially nowadays, and especially if you've had any prior adverse actions, and then check it a final time before you file it. Conduct your inventories. We recommend at least quarterly. Complete your A&D entries daily if you can. Again, you have longer lengths of time, but why wait? Prevent your straw purchases. Complete your multiple firearms reports as required, and respond to your traces within 24 hours. And keep proof that you went ahead and replied with those. Just a few more minutes, we're getting to the Q&A. So here's where we're going. If we're coming to an area near you, we strongly recommend that you get your reservation in with Nix. The next slide will give you that information. So get ready to take a picture of that or write it down. In a couple of weeks, I'm up in Minneapolis, Fargo, and Sioux Falls. Hope to see you there. It's always fun running into you guys and saying hi. If you are at any of these events, please say hello and let me know you're a reviewer. Over in Baton Rouge and Tulsa, JC, is that you or Bill? I think that's Bill.
I'm Tulsa. I think Bill's Baton Rouge.
Yep. And then JC is at either Lexington, Charlotte, and Charleston. It's Bill and JC. So go ahead and hey, reserve your time. There's the dates. If you're not catching this now, go ahead and give us a ring. But here's how you go ahead and register. Real easy. Make your reservations by emailing just Nix_. This is it's an underscore right here. Nix_events@fbi.gov. Your FFL number, your name, phone number, email, location you'll be attending, and how many people, how many employees you may be bringing. So a couple of our clients a couple of weeks ago with their entire staff, they closed the store to bring their 5 people to the 5-day training event. It was that important to them, and they don't want to get revoked. So go ahead and do that. Let us know if you still need this, and it'll be included in your information. And guys, this is a real bonus to you. JC and I have been working feverishly to complete our FFL compliance checklist for you. It'll be emailed to you at the end of the week. It'll be, I think it's 2.5 pages of everything you can possibly do and check off to make sure you're compliant to pass your next inspection. Not only the 4473 stuff, just the other stuff that's important and you should be aware of. Just check it off, make your list, get things in place, and call us if you need us. That will be sent to you at the end of this week to anyone who's attending today and registered. And then if you're not an NSSF member, why not? I just want to give you a little disclaimer here. If you are thinking about joining the premium retail membership program, which everyone's been asking us about, is $750 a year. You get $25,000 in legal defense fund protection. You get a mock audit inspection. JC or I get out to you, visit your site for an entire day, do the training, do the mock audit, and build a relationship with you guys. Get everything in order to prevent a bad next inspection. I think we're booking into the end of July already, probably beginning of August. So please be aware that if you are looking to do this, the sooner the better, because we're not going to get to you for a while, but we can start helping you and start supporting you through this relationship remotely. We don't have to be there to get you on track per se to pass your next inspection. Let us know if you need any answers there.
And remember, guys and girls, just remember the NSSF is your trade association. They're not the NRA. They are the National Shooting Sports Foundation, the parent organization of SHOT Show. They are the ones that are fighting in Colorado and Washington. They are the ones submitting lawsuits. They're piling it on. So whether you want that premium retail membership or just a standard membership, it doesn't matter what FFL type you are. If you're an FFL, support this organization. They fight the fight.
Yep. Now their website for the basic membership is real simple, nssf.org. And if you're interested in the premium retail membership, give us a call. We'll help you fill out the application.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. We're going to jump into questions, guys. We got about 35 questions. So we're going to go fast. We call this rapid fire. Keep your questions coming. JC, you ready?
Oh, let's do it.
All right. Could you briefly go over the paperwork trail for a firearm that I would buy at a gun show that I intend to keep for myself? Purchase would be from a private owner not using my FFL. Does it need to go into my bound book, or can I just label it as personal and add it to my collection? I'm a sole proprietor FFL. And thank you, Gerald, for submitting that before the webinar.
All right. So you're at a gun show and you're an FFL and, you're a sole proprietor, not a corporation. In this instance, what you're saying here is purchase would be from a private owner not using my FFL. As long as your state allows for private party transfers between two individuals, you're perfectly fine. Go ahead and make that purchase. Now, conversely, because you're a sole proprietor, you can also bring that firearm into your bound book and go ahead and dispose of it right back to yourself. So you have some record of who you acquired it from and who was disposed to yourself in a sole proprietor situation. So you're perfectly fine going either direction with that. If you're purchasing it for yourself, no, you do not have to put it in your bound book. But is it a good idea to have record of who you received that firearm for, just in case down the road, God forbid, something's up with that firearm? Absolutely.
Yeah, and JC, you said a nice thing there. If your state permits, but if you're out of state, as an FFL, you can buy guns all over the country as an FFL.
That is correct.
In that case, it would go into your bound book. But if you're in state and at a gun show, not buying under your FFL or with your FFL, either way is fine.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Gerald. Appreciate that. Here's from Philip. Says, I recently transferred a firearm after the Brady date expired and received a call from the ATF 13 days later, advising me that the background check was denied. I told the ATF operator that I transferred the handgun and that I did so after the Brady date. I was instructed to send the form 4473 to the ATF. I was asked if I would refund the firearm if retrieved, and I said yes. Am I in trouble, and what should I expect now? I haven't been inspected in 6 years. Will this cause me to be inspected?
No. As long as you actually waited the full 72 hours, the 3 government business days, it happens. It happens quite often, actually. You're all good in this. You release the firearm as you were required to do so. You waited the 3 days, didn't get a response, went ahead and released the firearm to the customer, and ATF NICS contacted you 13 days later. The only thing you're really required to do with this transaction is exactly what you did, was submit a copy of the 4473 to the ATF. They'll take it from there. It's nice that you're willing to, do a refund on the firearm if you get it back. Always keep in mind, number one, you respond to the ATF with whatever they are requesting from you, and make sure that ATF form 4473 is updated with the information that you received from the ATF NICS with regard to the 13 days later. So you're going to fill out that box that says, after the firearm was transferred, I received the following information from NICS, etc. Mark the appropriate box and make sure you notate the date on the form 4473 associated with that customer and that firearm.
Yeah, updating those boxes is important, guys. 27E, a lot of folks forget to update 27D and E in that situation. So make sure if you ever get a delay, make sure 27D is complete.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Philip. This one asked not to be identified, but thanks for the question. I have mistakenly transferred 7 firearms directly out of my A&D to myself without using a form 4473 and background check. I'm an LLC and was issued my FFL over the phone during 2020, during COVID, and was not aware that I could not do this. You explained this is not permitted for LLC operators during your February video on YouTube. How should I explain this when the ATF shows up, or should I call them? And do you have any advice? I know why they don't want to be. Wait, I know why they don't want to be disclosed.
Yeah, no kidding. So, number one, no. Contacting the ATF isn't going to do anything for you. Here's what I would tell you: reacquire those firearms back into your bound book. Make a notation in your bound book. If you have an electronic bound book, if you don't have an electronic bound book, do a little memo for record that simply states exactly what you told us in your email. Reacquire them. Go ahead and do that 4473. And if you're required to do a background check, then do so. And then redispose of them to yourself. You just want to make sure you have a memo for record. And when the ATF shows up, wait for them to ask the question. If they ask the question, then you tell them the truth. And that's all you can do. They don't ask you the question, why bring it up? All right. So just make sure that you got those guns reacquired and do that new 4473. So everything is good to go. Is this a citable violation? Absolutely. Telling on yourself do you any good? Absolutely not. If you did, I can almost guarantee you, If an IOI has the opportunity, they're going to come out and do an inspection. Quite honestly, if you were issued your license back during the pandemic in 2020 and you received a virtual, what we call qualifying inspection, you should be inspected at any point right now. They were supposed to come out 12 months, so they're a little outside the window on that, but I would certainly be expecting an inspection at any time.
Yep. And if you're lucky, they won't be back for 12 months from here, or from the date of this issue, and they may not see this down the road. So,
yep.
No sense in raising your hand, as we say. I am a home-based gun dealer and primarily sell to friends, coworkers, and family. I've been selling for guns for 7 years and have never been inspected. Not surprised. After watching your videos, I realized I've not done everything right regarding my bound book and started to make corrections for guns I still have, but cannot update guns I sold. I missed items like missing complete ARs with the actual listing complete ARs with the actual caliber versus multi. And I know I failed to list many manufacturers or importers. I always listed one. How will this impact me when I finally get inspected?
Look, these are citable violations. For the most part, what you're saying here, I would tell you, chances are, definitely you'll get something listed on a report of violations. From an administrative action standpoint, I would probably speculate here, but, more or less maybe a warning letter. The IOI would definitely provide you with training. Remember, if you're transferring a firearm, and it's real specific with most AR platform rifles, as well as some of the various pistols out there that, especially like the SIGs, where you can pieces, parts, components, and people build their own guns or whatnot. If the firearm says multi, it's a fully completed firearm, a rifle, whatever the case may be, shotgun, etc., and it says multi for caliber, you need to record whatever that firearm is chambered in. So if that AR pistol or AR rifle is chambered in 5.56, 223, 308, 300 blackout, whatever the case may be, you need to actually document the caliber as whatever it's chambered in. So always remember that.
Yeah, now this is a great item to put in your ATF Communications Logbook, saying I watched the video on this date. I realized I was making mistakes. As of this date, I retrained myself to be compliant. Put it in your book. And that will align with the inspection process when they come finally to inspect you.
Yeah, notate in your book that on this date, this time, I started making changes. I realized I was wrong. And this date, this time, I started fixing all my open dispositions. And you're right, go back and fix anything you have currently in inventory and get it notated of the correction.
Yep. All right, this one's for David. JC, I'm just going to rapid fire. Can I sell a serialized strip lower AR receiver and a parts kit together, or is that considered manufacturing?
That is considered manufacturing. You should not sell kits together.
Yeah. Yeah. And guys, this all got updated with the last marking ruling. What, in October was it, JC?
Yeah,
August. Yeah. And most folks, we still run into folks arguing with us about this, and the ATF's not going to always send notes to you guys on updates. They expect you to go figure out what the new rulings are on your own, or attend our webinars and understand the details behind the 17 or 65-page rulings. But yeah, you can gunsmiths, just to tag on to that. Somebody called me last week and said, when are they going to prevent gunsmiths from building ARs? And I said, what do you mean? Gunsmiths can't build ARs anymore. So again, change in the last ruling, whether it be pre or post acquisition by the consumer, a gunsmith building an AR is a gunsmith building an AR, that's manufacturing. All right. Regarding internet sales, when an individual purchased the firearm by a gun broker, I attended an NSSF-sponsored webinar, not hosted by you guys, and the presenter indicated that for internet sales where the firearm is transferred from me, FFL to another FFL, who will ultimately do the 4473 on the purchaser, that I should still ensure that I have purchaser's information as it would be on his government-issued ID. While this is certainly good practice, I cannot find any ATF documentation as such. It's not, you're correct. This is from Richard. So when you sell a gun online, there's no requirement per se for you to log that into your A&D book, because you ultimately are making an FFL to an FFL transfer. And that's what the final record's going to be. But JC, what do you say about the best practice of keeping the ultimate purchasers?
Well, if you, no, here's the deal. You're selling a firearm on Gunbroker. You do have to acquire that firearm into your books, and whoever you acquired it from, whether it's a distributor or another individual, and then you dispose of it to the other FFL. Now, as far as some sort of receipt or invoice or whatever the case may be, yes, you should absolutely have an invoice of some sort saying who's buying the firearm, and send a copy of that with the firearm to the receiving FFL for the transfer, because the receiving FFL needs to know who's the buyer of that firearm, who's coming in to pick this up, just to reduce their risk and liability, as well as to ensure the proper person is picking up the firearm that made the purchase, and it's not a straw purchase situation. So definitely send an invoice, copy the invoice of whoever's buying the gun with the gun to the receiving FFL, so they can do things properly, help them out to make sure they don't get in trouble.
Yeah. Richard, to answer your question, it's not in writing anywhere. That part of it, these would be considered your business records, your point of sale records for transfer of currency for the acquisition, for the purchase of a firearm. And to JC's point, absolutely. We all hate when we get we call it gun in a box. There's a term for it. Gun just shows up. We don't know who it's for. So typical with an FFL transfer. So provide the business records, but you do not, someone says, do I have to list the customer's name in the A&D book? You don't have to.
No,
a lot of folks like to. You
Yep.
can list that in parentheses next to the FFL name you're transferring to for your internal records, good record keeping. But this, unfortunately, is not explained anywhere that we've ever seen from the ATF. Just want to make that piece clear.
Yep.
Last month you mentioned if you have a law letter, you should have a Form 5 to the department that issued the letter. My understanding is if you have Form 5 it to them, you can't have it back without another law letter. And we just do demos without the Form 5.
So a couple different scenarios with this, and there's a lot of buzz around this because we have a couple of, I think one's a police chief and the other one's a sheriff who have been indicted for, potentially helping out FFLs get machine guns, etc., to rent on the range or whatnot. Here's the deal with this. What the ATF is looking for is that if a police or law enforcement or government entity has made the request for a demo, they want to see that they actually demoed that firearm, right? It's a machine gun. They want to see that they actually demoed it. Now, whether that's on a Form 5 or you're a retail range and you allowed them to come in and demo it on your range, you just want to make sure you have some sort of documentation. Now, if they Form 5, now if you've received a law letter and obtained or acquired a machine gun for a department, there needs to be, the reality of, hey, look, you got a demo for this. The police department or law enforcement agency or government entity, in order to be honest and truthful, not perjure themselves, request and actually demo that firearm. That's the bottom line with this. As far as the Form 5 that you need another law letter, no, you already have the law letter. They're just returning it to you via Form 5 because they made the decision not to make the purchase. And now it remains in your inventory for the time period, and you can do with it, whatever is lawful. So you may want to sell it to another police department. You may want to put it out there for another police department to purchase it, etc. So, you already have the law letter on file. They came in, they demoed it, they Form 5 it back to you. There's a paper trail that shows that. Now, again, if you're a retail range and one of our retail range clients, multiple locations, they actually have what's called a law enforcement day, where they do a demo day for law enforcement in the local community, and they come in and try a bunch of different firearms. It's a great opportunity to meet with local law enforcement and show them what you got as far as a retail range. So
yeah, and that question was specific to NFA dealers and SOTs, machine
Yes.
guns, so short barrel rifle is a type of firearm. All right, next from Powder House. Thank you, Powder House. 21B is confusing to people. It's clear to me, but also 21N, 21.2 confusing. if they mark first and then read it after. I'm trying to go through and tell them to read each. Okay, so we talked about 21 and 1 and 2 in our conversation, our presentation. We also have the Before You Begin guide available for first-time gun buyers, which talks about this and helps them understand it before they fill out the form. But let's talk about 21B. 21B is asking, do you intend to purchase or acquire any firearm listed on the form, blah, 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 or ammunition for sale or other disposition to any person described in questions 21C through M, or persons described in 21N, foreign alien immigrant. So the answer is this, and the best practice is
here's what,
well, let me get through the 21N, Pete, the 21N through C. Take this form, copy and paste it, the prohibiting questions to a one-page document, laminate it, put it on your area of your store, your counter, wherever they fill out 4473s. Make 21N through, or take 21C through M available. Give them, because it's really hard for them to flip through and understand what they're actually trying to figure out. Say, hey, here's these questions. Are you buying a firearm for one of these people? That's a critical question. And the reason this is on here is because it relates back to a new law hidden within the Safer Communities Act, which was passed last July. This is specific to a law. Okay, that's why this question has to be on there, because now if somebody lies about this, they're committing a felony, believe it or not. It's not explained anywhere. We heard that through the congressional hearing a couple of weeks ago. That's where it was fully explained. 21B and C are new law-related questions and nobody has explained before. So go ahead, JC, sorry.
All right, so here's the deal, and you can email us and we can send you kind of some information specific to this. So, and we get a lot of questions specifically on 21B and C because there is no reference in the instructions for these two. So for 21B, what I tell folks is refer the buyer to the warning outlined in 21A. The warning states, warning, you are not the actual transfer buyer if you're acquiring any of the firearms on behalf of another person. If you are not the actual transferee buyer, the licensee cannot transfer any of the firearms to you. You cannot purchase a firearm for someone else who is prohibited by law from possessing one, or for someone who does not want his or her name associated with the transaction. Very standard straw purchase prevention question. All right. And then go through, this is what's considered a straw purchase. We actually have an email, a template email I'll send you. You can take the information off the email, put it in a Word doc, laminate it, slide it across to the customer. You're not coaching them. You're not facilitating. You're referring them to other parts, pieces, segments of the 4473 for reference. For item 21C, refer to the transferee buyer certification, specifically that last sentence before items 22 and 23. I further understand that the repetitive purchase of firearms for the purpose of resale to predominantly earn a profit without an FFL is a violation of federal law. All right. So that's what we tell people, because there's nothing in the instructions. We just tell you, refer them to other parts of the 4473. That'll clarify. Okay. So shoot us an email. We'll get you over this guidance. And that way you're set. And we're going to add this to, we're actually going to change the name of our first time buyer's guide to buyer's guide to the 4473, because it seems as though not only first time buyers are having a problem, long time buyers of firearms are having a problem as well.
Yeah. All right, Lance, we got a Washington question here. With the new laws passed in Washington State, can we still ship accessories, uppers, buttstock, scripts, etc. to Washington State? My answer is not all of these. You have to see what parts and pieces are restricted or considered parts of an assault weapon. Right. This is a very general question, I know, and I gave you kind of a general answer, but if you read
Washington's become very restrictive on very specific parts, pieces, and components of a firearm. So you got to be very careful. And just so you're aware, the Washington AG is coming after dealers and distributors outside of the state. They've already hit up Davidson's and I believe Lipsy's with subpoenas for information. So you got to be really careful.
Yeah. How does a type 7, thanks to SVG, how does a type 7 with SOT manufacture a machine gun for shop use? You're using gear fire, log out, log in, etc.
how does,
What's a machine? You can't just build a machine.
yeah. So, yeah. So in this case, it's the same as any manufacturing, right? So number one, you're a type 7 with an SOT. So I'm assuming you're a manufacturer of NFA firearms. So that means you're a type 2 or a class 2 rather SOT, right? You're a manufacturer of NFA firearms. So what you'll do in that situation is, just like any other firearm, if you have a receiver and you have all the pieces, parts, and components, etc., you dispose of that receiver to yourself, and then you bring it back in as a rifle. Once you bring it back in as a rifle, then you'll dispose of it to yourself, or you'll bring it in as a machine gun, depending on where you are in the process. Remember, you as a manufacturer type 7 with a class SOT aren't required to ask permission of the ATF to manufacture a machine gun or anything else. You have to notify them once you've manufactured it. So if you've manufactured the sear or whatever else, that's considered a machine gun. So you're going to want to bring that book into your books. And then whenever you do bring that into your books, you're going to want to file your form 2 and actually notify the ATF that you've manufactured an NFA firearm.
Yep. And all of you on here, thank you all for staying. If you got NFA questions, JC is the specialist on our team, and Charlie, actually better than me, is really our team. So NFA goes to JC, licensing goes to JC. So just keep that in mind. Hey, Troy in Homestead. Hey, Troy, good to hear you. I just want to let you know I emailed the agent. Thank you. Waiting for an answer. If they do revoke, what are the first steps? So just in general, Troy and I have been talking for a few weeks. Went through an inspection, first time inspection, had some issues. So Troy, if they revoke you, you call us immediately. We see the notice of revocation. We'll go ahead and look at your report of violations. If you want to pursue saving your license, you get in an agreement situation with us. We send you a service agreement. There's a price involved in that, obviously, and you decide if you want to go from there. But again, it's a very pricey issue if you don't have that NSSF program in place before the inspection. So again, just word of warning to all of you, you can't join that program after your inspection or after you receive any adverse action.
And keep in mind, they're not just going to revoke your license willy-nilly. They send you a notice of revocation first. You have 15 days to respond. So once you get that notice of revocation, give us a call and we'll walk you through the process.
Yep. Next, hey, Nick, will Washington State pawn shops be able to, let me go back to, first of all, JC mentioned earlier that out of state CCW cannot transfer a firearm, or a handgun rather, and out of state residents cannot transact or transfer a firearm, a handgun. The only exception there is on pawn redemptions. I wanted to throw that in. A truck driver lives in lives in Oregon, driving to Michigan, can pawn his handgun along the way in any state and pick it up in that state on his way back. Maybe needed some cash, pawned his handgun, picked it up on a return trip. Happens all the time. ATF allows for that, as long as if the person's out of state, they can redeem their handgun at a pawn shop, as long as everything else is in step with the requirements. So back to Nick. Will Washington State pawn shops be able to sell SARs out of state? Hearing different things. So the answer is yes. According to the rule today, like Craig, our friend Craig Terry up there, if you, again, call him if you need AR or assault weapon type firearms or restricted firearms or magazine, high capacity magazine firearms. Pawn shops, type 2, type 1, FFLs, as far as we know, I don't think there was any restrictions in the bill. I don't think they mentioned anything about pawn shops, actually. They kind of left that out of the bill. That an FFL can sell online to out-of-state residents, and that would be through an FFL to FFL transfer out of state.
Right. And that is only for firearms that were in inventory at the time that the law went into effect.
Right.
You can't go out and buy pallets of ARs and start selling them online today. It's only what you have in inventory.
You are selling pre-ban acquired firearms. Right?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. McCluskey, our sales team is also having a lot of issues with customers on question 21B. We just talked about that. What defines coaching, and is it wrong to simply read the question aloud to the customer I am not talking about giving them help. I am saying it is considered coaching to simply read it. Is it coaching if I simply read it aloud as if we were talking to them so they can hear another human being read sentence that they are already confused on?
Pete, just send me an email and I'll send you over the guidance.
Yeah.
It's really simple. You can certainly do that, but I'd tell you to refer them to those specific sections. It provides a lot more clarity to them so they understand.
Hey, Stetson, long time no talk. With paper 4473s, it's our understanding that when someone has illegible handwriting, we as the FFL can write legibly and adjacent to the customer's writing, but we don't know a proper etiquette or standard on how to implement this practice while also being compliant. How do you deal with correcting bad penmanship? So according to the instructions, the only place you are allowed to write on there for the customer or to compliment the customer is above their name. And that's in the instructions, actually. If you can't read their name, you're allowed to, the FFL is allowed to also print it above what they've written. You can clearly identify them in the future. But you are not allowed to really write anything else in that form for them. And if that's really the case, they need to bring somebody else to help them with that. You could deny them a transfer based on bad handwriting. Sure, you can deny them for whatever reason whatsoever. So let them bring a helper. But in that case, they need a helper, and then they also need a third-party witness. So there's really 3 people involved. There's the customer, the helper, and the witness who watches that activity. And the witness cannot be an employee of the store. And the only requirement you have is to list the name of the helper and the employee in box 32. Just say helper was John Barker, witness was John Clark, and they all sign line 20. 21 rather, which is 22, the signature. They all have to sign, but you identify who those signatures belong to in box 32. You don't have any copies of ID, no other paperwork required. You just need to be able to identify who is there to help the buyer with his penmanship. And the same thing with a translator, the same thing with someone who can't read and write, illegibility. Somebody doesn't speak the language, English language. Same process for all those different people. 3 signatures and identify who they are in box 32. That should be good. Yep. All right. Thanks, Stetson. Hey, Shootist, I've got a box full of braces. If anyone needs some, tongue in cheek, all my pistols have been form tubed. All right. Everybody contact Shootist if you need any braces. McCluskey to everyone. We use fastbound. What is the appropriate action to take with a customer who fills out a 4473 incorrectly? A very common thing amongst dealers or everywhere, where the customer makes a simple, stupid mistake and they actually aren't buying the gun for somebody else. They're not a felon. Maybe they checked the wrong box. Maybe they got self-disqualified, right? Do we allow them to fill out another one, or do we tell them to come back the following day?
That's a matter of your company policy and what you're willing to risk, as far as that's concerned. Fastbound, I can't remember the exact nomenclature, but it's something to the effect of you abandon that form 4473. There's actually a step-by-step process for it. And if you reach out to Fastbound, they'll tell you what that process is. But if you feel confident, then you can certify that the individual in front of you isn't making a straw purchase or isn't a felon or prohibited person, and you want them to start over on a new 4473, that's the process that Fastbound uses. So it's really internally whether or not you want to allow them to, and whether or not you feel comfortable and confident when you certify the 4473 that you're not transferring a firearm to somebody that's prohibited.
Yeah, I'll tag on to this. This question came up at 2 different ATF seminars a couple of weeks ago, in 2 different states, to 2 different IOIs. Okay, and one was an area supervisor. Heard the same thing. Here's the deal. He says, listen, if the customer made a legit mistake, you do not require, and you did not submit it for a background check, you do not need to keep the form. Yep. Period. Okay, it's again, that's why FFLs are licensed under the guidelines to manage this process for the government, right? You're licensed to do this. Your discretion is going to determine whether or not you keep a form that has not been submitted for a background check. Those forms would be those where people are self-prohibiting. Mm-hmm. They're creating their own denial situation. Mm-hmm. Those forms we recommend keeping. Okay, where they've signed off but self-prohibited, did not make a mistake, you're denying a transfer, you didn't pass go, didn't submit them for a NICS or background check. Those forms you should put in your denied cancel files, keep them forever. Okay, but if you have a legitimate mistake Customer didn't understand anything, clicked the wrong box, made a legit error, got confused, didn't understand the question, and you believe it's okay to do a do-over before they have been submitted for a background check, you don't need to keep those forms. Okay. And that question comes up every month, so I thought I'd cover all of that with you guys.
Yep.
All right. Hey, JC. All right, Powder House again. Because of the state laws in Washington, is it the same as California? If you send a gun to California, will it come back to you if you are not in California? We are in Nevada, and we do gun shows where there are California people here. I need to know. I've been telling them we could ship to a California gun store.
No, not unless you're licensed to do so in the state of California. You should
Well-
not be shipping firearms to the state of California unless you're licensed to do so. You
Right.
have to be listed, and it has to be a California compliant firearm.
Yeah, and it's not a hard process. It takes half hour to join the California DOJ system.
Yep.
Where you register your FFL, you're out of state, you can import into California. You just have to call ahead, get a shipment.
Oh yeah,
Number-
there's all kinds of stuff you have to do. Yep.
It's not hard. The people who learn how to do it make a lot of money. Again, selling, like JC said, California compliant firearms now.
Yeah, it has to be on the roster.
Yep. FYI, Rick, FYI for Colorado SB 23279, Ghost Gun bill will most likely get signed
boy.
by governor this week.
Hey, thanks for the heads up.
Yeah, we'll check into that.
Thank you,
yeah,
Governor
guys.
Hollis and the legislature of the state of Colorado for doing more crap.
And guys, we do our best to keep up with all of the stuff, but there's 50 states and there's 2 of us and we're busy all week. So really watch your state legislature, watch your stuff. And if you can, throw stuff our way. We love all of you who do that. If you get updates locally or hear about stuff brewing in the news, please drop us a text or send us a link.
Yeah.
All right, Gerald, with all new state laws you are covering that mentioned dealer liability, does that apply only to in-state dealers or out-of-state dealers too? For example, does dealer A sell to a buyer in Washington, Colorado, et cetera, and ships to a dealer B in that state who does the transfer? Liability applicable to everybody? The answer is yes. All of these state laws that we're seeing are in violation or contradiction to the PLCAA, which was passed back in 1980. I think it was 2006 by the NSSF. Larry Keene himself. I mean, they got the protection and liability clause in place for gun dealers, industry manufacturers, and importers that said you cannot be responsible for what happens with a gun after somebody buys it from you, basically. Same thing with a car, same thing with pharmaceuticals, et cetera, et cetera. Now, all these states are trying to hold everybody in the chain of events, the chain of custody of that firearm accountable. The far-reaching legislation, that's why we're waiting for the Supreme Court to make a final decision on many of these cases, and for all of these cases to kind of wean themselves out of where they are, but it's going to take some time. And that's why Davidson's and RSR and Ellipses and others are filing lawsuits, Aero Precision, et cetera. It's inconceivable that they can go all the way down the back down the line like New York State did, and that case is still in the courts trying to be decided. They want to throw it all back on the manufacturers, gun dealers, importers for what happens with a gun after it's purchased by an individual. So let's stay tuned on that, but the general answer is yes. Matt S, wrong line number on the paper 4473. I don't know what that is. Okay, wrong line number on paper 4473. All right, Mr. McCluskey again. We love you, Mr. McCluskey. In the case of states where our gun line closes prior to our store, background check closes prior to our store closing on some evenings, are we allowed to have a customer fill out the background check that evening, then actually call to check in the first thing in the morning? Absolutely, yes.
Sure.
Just make sure
They just make sure they recertify.
Yeah, when they pick it up, right?
Yep. Yeah, unfortunately for you guys too. I mean, Nevada is the same way. They can only call in so many background checks at a time. So it happens. It happens.
And a lot of times, you're close to closing, you have the person fill out the form, you're going to call it in the next morning. Absolutely permissible in all states. Just make sure your dates are right, your release dates are right, your Brady dates are right, all that fun stuff. Line for Jordan, actually. We don't keep a log, but we do retain all trace request info and confirm all the ATF contacts via email, which are also retained. Is that the same as the log? Well, the log, Jordan, has so many other things in it. calls, traces, straw purchase preventions, training information. You know, we're going to have to, if you ever get into adverse action with the ATF, we're going to have to create your history as a presentation of your FFL from the last inspection until now, everything you've done proactively, preventive wise, all that fun stuff. So it's really easier for you, whether or not you hire us, somebody's going to have to do it. When you walk in empty-handed to an adverse action, ATF warning or hearing, and you don't have anything prepared that they expect now during this process, you're going to be SOL. You're not going to get very far with them, and you're going to be wasting their time. They're going to be resentful that you didn't prepare. We've had that occur even in hearings that we've helped prevent FFLs with. The DIO challenges the credibility of the responsible person sitting there saying, did you really do any of this? You know, or are these guys just talking for you? So again, this is all up for you guys. This is best advice for you guys to get in place right now when you can and get ahead of it. What is a used gun report? We kind of talked through that, right?
Yeah.
Wrong line number.
Kiki. Don't forget Kiki.
Hey, Kiki, wrong line number on that 4473. Oh, wrong line number. Oh,
Yeah.
Kiki, you're absolutely right. Okay, so I used the 4473 that for correction data where they crossed out the firearm on line 1 and put it on line 2 as a pawn redemption, but they never updated the box 8 that says as a pawn redemption should have been line 2, not line 1.
Box 7.
Box 7. Yeah. Kiki, you're the star of the day. All right, thank you. Thank you. Figures you'd bring that to my attention. Primo, time to crime. JC, explain time to crime real fast.
Yeah.
Again.
Time to crime. The time that elapses between the time the firearm is disposed to an individual and the time that it is recovered by law enforcement at the scene of a crime or whatever the case may be. So that's the time to crime, between the time it was disposed to an individual and recovered by law enforcement.
All right. All right, Rhonda. Hello, Rhonda. Well, the demand letter 2 comes through the mail.
You will receive it via postal, U.S. Postal Service. Yes, 100%.
And if you don't receive it and don't respond and miss that first quarter submittal, you will get a nice, nasty note from Matt Grimes, who manages the whole process. Real nice guy, as long as you cooperate properly. And when you are on the program, he also reminds everybody when to send those in. He sends out quarterly updates and reminders. So he's actually very good at what he does. They just want your information, so they don't have to call you.
Yep.
Hey, Adam, going to have legal estate gun sale on property premises in Kansas. If we treat each sell like normal, any other restrictions?
No, if you're having it on premise on your licensed premises, just make sure you're acquiring the firearms into your bound book. And if some of them don't sell and the customer wants them back, the actual seller of the firearms, even though you're facilitating the transfer, they are going to have to do a 4473 and a background check in order to get those guns back. The other piece to that is from an estate sale standpoint. I'm assuming whoever owned the firearms is now deceased. You need to make sure that that estate is cleared from probate, or the individual that's brought the firearms to you is an heir and rightful owner of those firearms. So be aware of that. Looks like JB might be on the phone, so I'll take the next few here. Do all 4473s need to be scanned and kept in an electronic file in addition to the hard copy? No, not necessarily, unless you've gotten a, no longer a variance, unless you've notified the ATF that you're maintaining electronic files. If you're maintaining hard copy files, no, there's no requirement for you to maintain an electronic copy of the 4473 along with a hard copy. I mean, you can certainly do it, especially if you're utilizing a system like Fastbound or some of the others. They have that capability. So by all means, maintain a backup of it. But as far as electronic files, unless you're actually doing electronic filing of the ATF form 4473, there's no reason to. How long should video be kept? Well, it depends. Now, if you're in a state where they require you to have video and maintain a certain period of time of video, then you need to follow state law. But otherwise, we recommend, 90 days. If you can keep 90 days worth of video, that's a beautiful thing. Langford, no such thing as a stupid question, my friend. What does the initials PRM stand for? A premium retail member. I believe you guys are a premium retail member and a premium range member with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. So pick up the phone, give me a call later today. And I'll provide you any guidance that you need on that stuff. But you've been a premium member of the NSSF for years. So I'm a premium NSSF member. What is the best way to contact you guys to become a VIP member with FFLC? Just shoot me an email, Melissa. It's jc@fflconsultants.com. I'm going to go ahead and just send you a message with that right now. And we'll get you squared away and figure out what's going on with you and what the history with the NSSF is, et cetera. And then we'll figure out, where to go from there. So there is my email address sent over to you. All right, hold on. I got to scroll back up here.
Did you get
bear
this,
with
Steve?
me.
Sorry,
Bear with
JC.
me. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I had my burglary update there. So
Yeah, I had to scroll back up. Sorry about that.
can I start with Steve at 11:38?
Yep, sure.
Or did
I
you do
believe
Rick?
so.
Did you do Rick at 11:35?
I
yeah.
haven't done one.
Okay, Rick, do all 4473s need to be scanned and kept in electronic file in addition to the hard copy? No, absolutely not. I don't know why you're asking that question, because if you are scanning 4473s for cloud storage or perpetual storage, instead of printing them, you do one or the other.
Yeah.
Okay, you either keep them paper in your files, you keep paper files, or you keep electronic files of your 4473s. But here's the big caveat here. If you got electronic storage of 4473s on your server, in your computer, or in the cloud, that is what the ATF is going to inspect when they come to inspect you, or the annual inspection up to once a year. And they can ask you to provide one laptop for every 500 transfers that they have to review. They can also ask you to print those out for review. We've had that happen, and that's permissible. It's kind of bitchy if they show up and say, print 1,000 transfers so I can review them this week. All right, this whole paper storage thing is kind of squishy. And here's the last piece. If you are providing the ATF access to your electronic 4473s, there's an audit trail there that they're going to review for each and every correction. Hence, a lot of our clients have been printing them and keeping them in the file. What we call the quote unquote, the final copy is available for inspection by the ATF in a file cabinet. Just saying that. If you have more questions about that, give us a ring. We can explain that a little further offline.
Yep.
But our best,
And JB, I explained that in some systems they keep it, even though you're printing it, they do keep it electronically as well. But if you're not storing electronically, you're not required to.
right, but from as far as an ATF inspection process goes, you decide if you're going to allow the ATF to look at your paper records or your electronic records or both.
Yeah.
They can't just flip between both. Okay. All right.
I'm moving down to 11/6/56, the JG to everyone when I send a notice of multiple handgun sales. To ATF, I sometimes receive a confirmation, sometimes not. You and every other FFL in the country. JG, can the IOI hold that as a non-confirmation as a violation? No, we challenge this all the time. You provide evidence as long as what we tell everybody to do is just copy yourself, CC yourself on those emails. So you have record of the submission. We hear this all the time. As long as you can show evidence that you submitted it, you're good to go. Will they try to cite you? Yes, absolutely. They will attempt to cite you, but we will argue that all day long. Unnecessary info. Our state wants all the info they can get. Yeah, well, that's true. Do you recommend photocopying IDs for buddy files? I'm only keeping NICS transactions currently. That's an in-house call. Do we recommend it? It is a good business practice to do so. But again, keep it in your buddy file. There's no reason for you to attach it to the 4473.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you got regular customers, there's no reason to make make copies of IDs. If you got unusual one-off customers, you can make ID. There's no rhyme or reason, and there's no discrimination. You do what you do and decide how you want to file. Just don't file them with your 4473s.
Yep.
You skipped one there, JC. Do months have to be written out, such as May 8th, or can 5/8/23 be used? There is no formal requirement or stipulation as to how to write out dates or abbreviations such as road, RD, avenue, AVE. Dates can be written as long as they're written in the proper format, not the European format. Don't put the day first and then the month and the year. It can be written out in words or numbers as long as it's in the right English format.
Exactly.
JG, I think he's, did you read 1201 Jamie, JG, if possible?
No. Nope.
JG, if possible, convert your 3310.4 to a digital document and email to multiple handguns forms.atf. So you will have to always have a copy in your sent file. Good best practice.
Yep.
If you know how to do that.
Yep. We tell you to CC yourself as well, just to have backup.
Yep. So Chris, if the state law requires verification of a permit to buy handguns, if it requires verification of permit to buy handguns and assault weapons, should that number be recorded under 4473 as proof of verification?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can use block 32. Some people use block 26B, and others put it in block 29.
Yeah,
But
if you put it in
32
20,
is fine as long as it's documented.
yeah, if you put it in 29, just do not check the box there as the exemption. Just put the information in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that there are some states that require that that document be captured by the FFL.
Right. If in local seminars, the ATF has told us to attach a copy of page 1 of the Form 4 with the 4473 when a customer completes a 4473 when picking up an NFA item. Is that correct?
Read that again.
Yeah. ATF basically our local seminars is telling them to put a copy of page 1 of the approved tax stamp on a Form 4 with the 4473 in the file system.
Not required.
Not required. Everybody, they're all going to tell you it's a best practice. Oh, we like to see our best practice. It's best if you do. And none of that is statutory or required, but you should, we tell everybody keep a copy of the Form 4 anyway, because it's a great customer service process. When people lose their Form 4s, they can come to you, ask for that copy. They don't have to call the ATF to get a copy paid for and sent to them.
Because it's very difficult to get a copy from the ATF.
Right. Rapid fire time. Okay, Chris, we record those in block 32. Not sure what that is.
Yep.
32, guys, block 32. Great box. Put everything in there for your reference. Hey, Mark, sorry, thanks for attending. Here's Powder House again. Does attached continuation sheet have to be attached when you fax to point of sale, or is it just making the number of firearms and signifying handgun, rifle, or other okay? I'm not exactly sure what your continuation sheet for your firearms, if you're talking about the 4473 or the 3310.4 or 3310.12, all of the continuation sheets with the firearms listed, if any, must be attached to your original transfer or multiple firearm report. So I guess the answer is yes.
Yeah, the continuation sheet. If you sell more than 3 firearms, if the transaction is 4 or more firearms, must be attached to the original 4473.
Yeah. Hey, PND Sporting Goods. I was up there for the pawn convention about a month ago, a couple weeks ago. This is JB. Give me an email. I am coming back to do a lot of business up there with a lot of pawnbrokers and some gun dealers. So just give me a note about Pacific Northwest. Hey, Don, any update on when you'll have a new cheat sheet for us to put on our counter for the new 4473s? I don't know.
We will get those updated hopefully this week and get those out.
But I don't, Don, if you're talking about I don't know which cheat sheet you're talking about.
Yeah, the buyer's guide.
Yeah, that's available right now, guys, on our website. It's always been there since the new form was put out. So we're going
to add that 21B and C to it. So
yeah, and we'll send it
separately.
We'll get that sent out to everyone with the updated restricted states guide and the compliance checklist we mentioned earlier. Okay. Hey, JG, during one of my inspections, the ILI told me to simply write self in my A&D book to transfer a firearm I wish to keep. I've had my FFL for 43 years, and this has never been a big issue. Will I now be in violation?
Not self. You need to put your name and address. You're transferring it. If you're a sole proprietor, you're transferring to yourself, yes, but I would write your name and address. If you got it in writing from the IOI, hold on to that, whatever you got in writing. Will it be a violation? Probably not, as long as you can show that, it went to you, but I would recommend going forward that you write in your name and address as the person the firearm is being transferred to.
Yeah, JG, the problem is that IOI who told you that may be retired, gone, or wherever.
Yeah.
And the next IOI is going to say, what the heck are you doing? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, John, John says, as a gunsmith, can I receive an AR lower from a client along with the necessary parts to complete the lower and assemble these parts into a complete lower? I do not own the receiver or the parts. I would charge the client for my labor.
That is manufacturing. No,
Yep.
you cannot as a gunsmith.
Yep.
Unless you're a type 7.
Yep. Gunsmithing is simply described in the simplest terms as replacing like parts for like parts.
Yep. You cannot build out firearms from scratch. That is manufacturing.
Yep. Clarified in the marking ruling. All right, Barry, as a Washington FFL, can I purchase an assault weapon from a Washington resident and sell out of state? The answer is yes.
Yes.
That's one of the exemptions.
Yep. There's a provision for that.
Yep. Yeah. As long as, yes, there is. Yes. So it's in the bill. It's actually an exemption, pretty easy to find if you read the bill. I think it's on page 3. Hey, Rhonda, a regular customer came to pawn a pistol, employee copy the info from the previous pawn, which wasn't the same firearm. Customer came to pick up the firearm. Employee realized that it was incorrect firearm, put it in the right info off the gun on the 4473. So the info in the A&D record has the incorrect gun info. So you have to go back into your, whatever your pawn software is, Rhonda, you got to go in and edit that. There's got to be a function, whether it be Pawn Master or Bravo or whoever it is. You have to go back and edit the original acquisition of that firearm to be correct and redispose it using the correct serial number information for that customer. Still need help, give me a ring. We can talk offline, but there's got to be a way to do it with your software. Worst case scenario is you void that transaction and recreate it, and we can talk through that. Hey, Terry, Colorado, with the new state law, we are a contiguous state required to impose the 3-day wait to sell long guns to 21 and over residents if NICS approves the transfer. I don't know if that's in the bill, JC. Is that in the bill?
I just reviewed the bill, and it's not defined like, in the state of Florida where it says in this state, a retailer in this state, right? Or a dealer in this state. So I'm going to answer no to this because they did not define that. So if they're a Colorado resident, based on my interpretation of the bill, we'll see what comes out as far as further guidance from the Colorado State Police and CBI on this. But as far as I'm concerned right now, a 3-day wait will have to be abided by.
Yeah, the only other areas that where this exists is Illinois and the state of Washington, right? Yeah. So, the answer is no. Have you updated the state restrictions firearm transfer out of state residence guide? Terry, we're working on that just with all these new laws. We're going to see what the state Supreme Court does this week. So we're hoping by the end of the week, we do send out the state restrictions guide to everybody. Again, if you're registered today, you'll get that in an email link. And hey, Tony, thanks a lot for attending. See you soon, I think. We'll have to set up that visit. And the rest of you guys, just, hey, that was all our questions. We love when you attend. If you can, next month, when you get the invite a week ahead of time, just go ahead and send your questions in. Send in a list of questions. It helps us, get ready for the presentation and maybe even include some of those topics in the presentation. If that's it, we appreciate you all sticking around with us. Congratulations, you guys are heroes. 116 of you. We'll get this recording sent out on YouTube and a link to you and your staffs if you want to review it. JC, any other closing comments, words of wisdom?
Nope. Thanks for everybody attending. Really appreciate you. Keep reaching out. We're happy to help you all and look forward to seeing you on the road here soon.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care.